Next on Life Focus.
I think that many people in general have no idea what it's like to live in the shoes of somebody who has bipolar disorder.
An illness that brings a dark cloud on everyday life.
You have one of the most serious mental illnesses that we know of. There's no cure for it.
I didn't recognize him. It wasn't whom I had married.
The silent devastation bipolar disorder imposes on families.
Sometimes I sit here and wonder what it would be like to have like a normal mind. I don't remember it.
Friends don't say anything because you would never tell your friend, I think you've got a mentally ill. I think you're mentally ill. We don't do that.
Living with extreme mood swings.
It's a lifetime of medication. You're probably not going to ever get to work again.
A mind misunderstood.
Your life as you knew it up to that point is done.
On this edition of Life Focus.
Hello everyone, welcome to Life Focus. I'm Dan Meyer. A new study shows that over 4% of the population suffers from bipolar disorder. That's double what the medical community reports. This condition, caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, creates extreme mood swings, often misunderstood. In today's program, we'll meet two families who faced intolerance from their schools and community when they revealed that someone in their home lives with bipolar disorder. Mona Hanine reports.
People are terrified of mental illness. They're particularly terrified of bipolar disorder. It is some scary stuff.
Mark Meehl of Lake Jackson, Texas, lives with the stigma that comes with bipolar disorder.
As soon as you tell someone I'm mentally ill, they're going to say, wow, that's too bad. Goodbye. And it happens every day.
Neighbors wanted his wife Debra and he to leave when they opened their home to people living with a mental illness.
Part of what we would offer families is that a family member would be able to come and we would be able to work with families on a weekend to be able to help rebuild their relationships. Because most of the time, family members are exhausted by their loved one's mental illness.
When the news of the Meehl house hit the newspapers, a whole community took them to court.
The correspondence that we received from our neighbors was, how were we going to protect the children and the old people from the bipolars?
In a 2-year ordeal, the Meehls won on appeal on the grounds of the Fair Housing Act.
If they won and you had a mental illness, you weren't going to have the right to live wherever you wanted. They were going to tell you where you had to live. And we had already seen that with part of our society once before, and I didn't want to see it with my part of the society either.
His part of society, often misunderstood.
We don't tell people we care about and know we're depressed. We don't tell them they're depressed or that they should seek help. We wait for them to come to us, but they're too sick to come to us.
Mark knows firsthand the pain of rejection of his bipolar diagnosis.
Families are embarrassed. They don't want the world to know. They don't want the friends to know. God forbid the church knows.
At first, Debra and Mark didn't know why he exhibited extreme emotions, creating madness in their home.
Our life was absolutely chaotic.
I would swing between moments of huge optimism where I knew exactly what to do, how to get the problem solved, what everyone needed to do, and what everyone's responsibility would be to get everything going right.
In this hypomanic stage, Mark's energy seemed endless.
He would become very obsessive compulsive. He would start cleaning the house frantically. He would turn everything to 90-degree angles on the corners of all of our tables.
And it's because you've got these voices going off in your head, carrying on little conversations to where, a pencil laying on the floor becomes this huge geopolitical issue because of what the voices are talking back and forth. They just blow each thing up into a huge mess.
The interesting thing with bipolar disorder is that mania feels good for people that have it. They feel empowered. They can have grandiose ideas.
Grandiose ideas followed by sudden, deep depression, lasting for weeks.
Couldn't get off the couch, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and increasingly angry. Frustrated, angry, raging. So it started to cascade.
Mark's uncontrollable mood swings followed no logical pattern.
He would go outside, kick all of our lawn furniture into the pool, and then after that he'd come back in the house and say that he felt better and wanted to know if we all wanted to go out for dinner. I was extremely angry. I saw him at that moment as lazy, self-absorbed, unconcerned with the rest of our family. He was spending money like water. I was at my wit's end.
But because mood disorders distort reality, Mark believed his wife was the problem.
It all came down to, if I had a divorce and Deb was out of my life, everything would resolve itself and I would be fine. And it was what I believed. I was absolutely convinced. I was insane.
A friend recommended that the couple visit a marriage counselor who didn't recognize the symptoms of bipolar disorder.
People with bipolar disorder tend to be intellectual. They are very convincing. And so when we would go to the doctor and we would be there for 30 minutes, he could suck it up and he could look as normal as anyone else.
When you're really sick, it's amazing what you can say and how persuasive you can be, even if it's not the truth. And she bought it. She bought whatever I was telling her at the time.
Mark had told her that he had racing thoughts, and she decided that he had ADHD, and that's when she placed him on Ritalin.
Medication failed to control his mood disorder, and when they got home, he went right back to an all too familiar scene.
He would accuse me and say, "How could you tell her that? It was just a lie. You are manipulative. You are controlling. It's all about you." And I didn't have this illness until we got married. So as soon as we divorce, I won't have this illness any longer.
Walked into the bathroom and just collapsed. Bottom line, collapsed into a ball on the floor, curled up, and just told her, I just wish I could die. And that was it. I was done.
Done with the mood swings, the anger, the depression.
When I was on the floor, Deb called a friend of ours, who we called Doc. We had known him. He's a psychiatrist. And said, Mark's in trouble. Can you help? And he said, yeah, he could. And so I went over. And he was the one who finally said, you're bipolar. You're sick.
It was profoundly difficult for me. And what I knew at that point, in that very selfish moment, is that my life would never be the same.
Those afflicted with untreated bipolar disorder lose the ability to reason. Their emotions range from the heights of mania to the depths of despair. If left untreated, the chemical storm in the brain creates absolute pandemonium in the home. But after Mark Meehl's bipolar diagnosis, his wife would not give up on her husband's well-being or on their marriage.
I love my husband, and I wanted to help him. I wanted our marriage to work, and I needed what I believed would be a set of skills to be able to make that happen.
After her husband's bipolar diagnosis, Debra researched the illness that haunted her family.
When Mark got sick, there wasn't a lot of information available. There were a few books that had been written, but there wasn't anything for family members in regards to how to deal with this illness.
An illness resulting from a chemical imbalance in the frontal cortex of the brain, the area that controls behaviors and emotions.
The medication keeps it from becoming life-threatening. It keeps it from becoming out of control, but it doesn't necessarily keep it from coming.
What keeps coming? Unexpected shifts in brain chemicals. Mark must change his medication every 5 or 6 weeks.
And so it's a constant lab rat sort of experience of balancing, a little of this, a little of that, a spoonful of this, a spoonful of that, trying to get it right.
We know that if we can change the chemical imbalance of the brain, then people's thinking then also starts to change. But ingrained habits of thinking a certain way are difficult to change. So it takes usually someone else, a therapist, to be able to show you where your thinking is a problem.
Today, a trained counselor, Debra discovered personality traits of people with this condition. The first, arrogance.
A person that is in a hypomanic state, running out of gas on the freeway. That person pulls off to the side of the freeway, they throw their keys in the field, and they walk to the closest car dealership and they buy a new car.
While buying a new car doesn't harm anyone, the impulsive act points to the second trait of a bipolar mind, a bigger-than-life ego.
The ego comes into play because they believe that they're entitled to a new car. They didn't like the old car anyway.
During the mania stage, people with bipolar disorder blame everyone except themselves for their irrational behavior.
It's very difficult without the right chemical balance in your brain to accept any self-responsibility.
So if we're $40,000 in debt, you should have taken the credit card away. If you were that concerned, you should have said something.
As a matter of fact, Mark did blow $40,000 in one day, and that's not the first time.
I had this great grandiose thought that I could, if you give me a chance, run your corporation for you and make far more money than you're doing. Very bipolar thinking, but, I was unmedicated.
Genetics seem to play a role. Nearly 90% of people with this condition have a family history of bipolar disorder or depression. Kristin Finn of Grand Rapids, Michigan showed signs of bipolar disorder when she was only 13 years old.
Having bipolar disorder can absolutely just hurt in your gut when you're depressed.
But nothing compared to the anguish of watching her own daughter suffer with the same illness.
Picture watching your child every single day, having her just be in her room with the lights off, just lying there and feeling numb, day after day after day.
It's a dread. You dread doing everything. You dread getting up. You dread answering the phone when somebody calls. You dread thinking. You dread talking to people. You dread trying to answer questions. It's just everything is painful. Everything hurts.
17-year-old Katherine Finn cannot seem to escape her dark depression.
You're like under a dark storm cloud. You know that it's not going to end, and it's just hopeless.
She would just yell at my mom and dad all the time. Like, when you brought up the words homework, it was just like, I just knew right then, like, okay, I gotta go leave the room.
Holly grows tired of living in a house so often filled with her big sister's rages.
There were constant screaming and yelling and doors slamming.
At first, Fred Finn believed Katherine's behavior looked like typical teenage rebellion.
I would get frustrated with Katherine, basically lose my temper, yell at her.
He thought I was pretty lazy. I didn't do homework. I didn't do chores.
It was basically like this Katherine forecast. And on Monday, Katherine was happy with a little chance of sadness, and it's like, and on Saturday, a total homework storm came out of nowhere.
Soon, the yelling, the screaming, and depression sounded familiar to Kristin, who could relate to the pendulum moods.
And I said, I think you have bipolar disorder. And we cried, and we were so happy that there was a reason behind all of her behaviors.
I lost a whole group of friends of about 10 girls, and then my very best friend since preschool ended up leaving too because she just said she couldn't handle it anymore.
And neither could the administration of 3 different high schools.
Now, at one particular school, Katherine was exhibiting a lot of bipolar symptoms. Her med levels were low. They weren't adjusted properly. And she was having a hard time. Just like a diabetic would have a hard time if their insulin levels were low.
Unlike a diabetic who receives treatment, Katherine was kicked out of her school.
We almost felt like she was being punished because, yes, she was exhibiting behaviors of bipolar disorder, but there wasn't the understanding.
If I had a broken arm and I said I couldn't play soccer because I broke my arm, you would say, oh, okay. If I said I made these mistakes because of a mental illness, you can't see that. You think you're making up something. An excuse. It's not tangible.
If left untreated, those with bipolar disorder slowly lose their friends, their job, and in severe cases, their lives.
I got really depressed and I got very suicidal. I started cutting.
It can be painful from the part of watching your daughter, because you're trying, as a parent, you like to try to protect your children, but there's no way you can protect this from happening.
There is not a day that I don't think about. Sometimes I want to cut. If I get upset about something, that's the first thing I want to do, and it's so hard to train yourself until you tell yourself you just can't do it.
Well, she was like in so much pain from depression. Some of the pain had to go somewhere. That's how she explained it to us later.
It's very scary when it comes out for me because I feel like I have no control.
Treatment for bipolar disorder begins first by recognizing the symptoms. Studies show that the average person may suffer 10 years before an accurate diagnosis, and then another 3 years to finally stabilize the medication. But getting to a point where bipolar disorder no longer disrupts your life can happen.
Once she was diagnosed and came back to school, on medication, new haircut, new look, she was still labeled as being weird Katherine, different Katherine.
For nearly 30 years, Kristin Finn controlled her mood disorder with medication. A prospect that makes her daughter uncomfortable.
A lot of my fears come from the unknown, like knowing that I have to depend on medication for my moods to be stable. It's just very, very frightening.
While her mother works full-time and runs her life normally, Katherine needs more help.
I had a therapist that I worked with for a few years, and she was a real inspiration to me, and she really helped me out. She taught dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT.
DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, is a treatment in which a therapist works as a coach to teach problem-solving and behavioral skills.
It literally changed my life. I took 2 16-week classes. It just taught me new ways to think, and I had stayed out of the hospital after that. I learned to stop cutting, and it's really hard work.
And the therapy part of DBT teaches people about what it is that they're thinking about. It teaches them to look at their own stinking thinking, is what we call it, and it teaches them to look at their irrational beliefs.
Debra became a DBT therapist. She hopes to help other families afflicted with the condition.
And I knew that if it was the answer for me and my marriage, that it would be the answer for hundreds of other couples that were out there that were struggling with this illness also.
She teaches those diagnosed to avoid old habits, such as crisis-generating behaviors.
We look at crisis-generating behaviors as drama. Drinking and not showing up at time for work. It can be deciding that you need a new dress instead of paying the rent. Any way that you create drama in your life that doesn't work, that is ineffective.
One of the tragedies of this illness is that it steals your confidence and can steal your soul.
It also steals time. Mark cannot remember months of his life, a condition called disassociation.
We have 18 months of our life that he will never regain. Birthdays, Christmases, events that we went to, friends that we talked to, he has absolutely no recollection of it all.
The relationships that you depended on have been so badly damaged that you're unsure if they can ever be repaired.
3 days after he started medication, which is truly unheard of, he came to me and he goes, I'm not sure what I need to apologize for, but I need to apologize for the last year. And he said it feels like I've been outside my own body.
Now living on disability, Mark accepts his permanent unemployment status.
Here are the reasons you will not hire Mark Meehl. I can put in a 16-hour day like anyone else. The only problem is that every 4 weeks, I'm going to become emotionally unstable. I'm going to start to snap at and yell at employees. I may make decisions and negotiate terms that are unacceptable to you as an employer, but make perfect sense to me. I may need to take a week, if not 2 weeks off, and when I come back, expect that you're going to have my job waiting for me.
He also doesn't expect friends to understand his new life.
We know wonderful people. They're great people, but not all of them are mentally ill-friendly, and so we've changed friends.
Mark needed to change roles with his wife.
As an obsessive-compulsive, who better to clean the house? Trust me on this one. Do the dishes, laundry. Oh, I'm the perfect guy. There's no question about it.
Debra now handles all the finances.
As a bipolar, I don't carry a credit card because if I'm suddenly manic, and it can happen like that, I can whip that card out. That's a serious problem.
Now, months after their court ordeal, they developed the Meehl Foundation and reopened the Meehl House to help families truly understand mood disorders.
Because most of the time, family members are exhausted by their loved one's mental illness. If we can take someone in early enough before the family member throws up their hands and throws in the towel, we can help families stay together.
By helping other families, Mark and Debra discovered a new purpose for their lives.
For us, going forward, it is about fulfilling our life purpose. It is about doing what we believe we've been called to do. And as difficult as this has been, the obstacles that we face, the rewards are profound.
You need to open up and feel God's presence in you every day. When you do that, then you can overcome anything, including this.
People with bipolar disorder do not need to be ashamed. And with proper treatment, they can control their mood swings. Both Mark and Debra Meehl and Kristin Finn have written their own books, helping others recognize and cope with this misunderstood illness. We hope you found this program helpful in understanding bipolar disorder. More resources can also be found on our website. That's all for today's Life Focus. I'm Dan Meyer. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you again next time.
You are happy one moment, you're angry the next, you're depressed the next, you're up, you're down, and there's no rhyme or reason.
I tell people that come to us for help that there is no magic wand, there is no magic pill. There is stabilization and there is recovery. And recovery is quite wonderful. It is profound. The right medication and the right therapy can truly save a family. And it can save someone's life that has a mental disorder.
More information about this program or other Life Focus episodes can be found online at www.lifefocus.tv. Pricing and ordering information for a DVD copy of this program are available on our website or by phone at 1-877-908-5433. The title of today's program is on the screen.